And welcome to a video by the Frugalista Chef, which would be me. I apologize for the lighting. Unfortunately, I don't have the best kitchen in the world, so this is the best I could do. But without further ado, I'll tell you what we're going to do today. We are going to make fried green tomatoes. Right? Yummy. Now, I have a garden, and I have tons of green tomatoes right now. I have a Cherokee purple tomato plant, and most of them are still green. So I decided to show you guys how to make fried green tomatoes. Now, before we begin, I'm going to explain the ingredients I have and how I'm using them. So first of all, I have a frying pan here. As you can see, it has hot oil, coconut oil in it, which is right here. Now, I have used sesame oil for frying, I've used sunflower oil for frying, and I've used coconut oil. I choose those oils because I feel like they're a healthier option. You can use canola oil if that is what your budget allows you to use. Next, let me bring over the stuff we're going to use today. So, we are going to use a mix. This is the Whistle Stop Fried Green Tomato Batter Mix. Now, this whole package would make 4 tomatoes. I am only frying up 1 tomato today, so I did not go by the instructions on here. What I did was I mixed 1.5 cups of this batter, 1 cup of water, and 1 egg in a bowl and whisked them together. So I can see our oil is getting hot, so without further ado, let's start. As you notice, these are cut thin. I used a mandolin. The reason I did them thin is because the thinner they are, the crispier they'll be. And crispy is what we love, right? So let's get that all coated. Flip that over a few times. Then we want to put it in our oil. Oh, you can hear that sizzling, can't you? That means it's nice and hot and perfect. And I'm using a fairly small pan, so I'll fit about 3 of these in there. Now, I put about a tablespoon of coconut oil in there. It melts fairly quickly. What I have is the more refined version. There's coconut oil that is less refined. It kind of depends on what you can find in your own area. I live in a small town, so what I found was the more refined type. Now I'm going to wash my hands and then come back and continue this. Okay, so this is the next ingredient I have, and I'm actually going to turn this up just a little bit. I have some herbs from my garden. So this is basil, thyme, oregano, fresh from the garden that I've chopped up really fine. I'm going to take it and I'm just going to sprinkle it on these tomatoes as I cook them. Yummy. Now, I actually forgot to get out an ingredient earlier, so I better go get that, right? This is Parmesan cheese. Now you can get this pre-shredded. I'm going to go grab a shredder. And I'm going to actually just grate this directly onto my tomatoes. You can buy it pre-shredded. Again, this is hard Parmesan cheese. Now make sure your hands are clean when you're doing this. So now, I need a spatula. So, I'm going to go ahead and flip these. Now, this is hot oil, so you want to be really careful not to splatter yourself or anyone near you. So I'm going to actually tilt it just a little bit before I flip them. And now I'm flipping them. They're nice and light golden brown. And I'm just going to let that sit there for a sec. Now I'm actually going to add some more oil because the more oil there is, the better it seems to fry up. So I'm going to take my spoon here, and I'm just going to add a bit right there on the side of that pan. I'll let that melt and swirl it around a little bit. So I'm just going to kind of do that. Oh, it is sizzling, isn't it? Now, I've got it on medium-high right now. So about a 7 on my oven dial. I'm going to take some more of these herbs. Sprinkle it in. Actually going to turn that down just a little bit. Now remember, this is hot oil, so I'm going to be really careful not to put your hands too close and get burned. So I'm going to get some more on there. Actually put a little bit too much in there. Now we're going to kind of swirl that around a little. And we're going to let that sit for a couple minutes. Let all that cheese melt, all that nice herby goodness. Now you want a light brown color on these. You don't want them black or too burnt. The herbs I used, again, they're basil, oregano, chives. You can grow those in your own garden really easy. Oregano is actually a perennial, and it'll come back every year if you treat it right. Basil is something you have to plant every year, and so is chives will actually come back on their own too. They're perennial as well. And I use Genovese basil, which is a dark green basil, and that's usually used in pesto, Italian cooking. Sometimes that's called a sweet basil. And I used Siam or Thai basil, which is a light green and kind of has a cinnamony type smell to it. So I'm going to flip these over again. And again, be very careful not to splatter yourself. They're really popping there. These are looking beautiful. Nice and crispy looking. I'm going to go get a plate to put them on. Now, this takes about 5 minutes, give or take. It kind of depends on how well you want them done and how crispy you want them. Again, I cut mine very thin because the thinner they are, the crispier they are, and the better they seem to taste. It's kind of like tomato chips, except it's green tomatoes. You can't use red tomatoes. They have to be a green tomato. You need to pick one that is fairly free of blemishes, is about medium size and nice and firm. If you don't have tomatoes of your own, find somebody who grows tomatoes and ask them to buy a few green ones. This time of year, there are a lot of green tomatoes out there in the gardens. So I'm going to take these off now, turn off my stove, and I'm going to put them on my plate. I have my plate lined with a paper towel to absorb all of that grease. And I'm going to take this pan off the heat so that I'm not getting splattered. Safety first. You notice I turned off the burner too. I'm being really careful not to put my hand anywhere near that burner. So these are what fried green tomatoes look like. And oh, that's a little hot. So there you go. There's some fried green tomatoes. I would love to hear feedback from anyone who has made these themselves. Feel free to tell me how they tasted, what you thought of the recipe, if you tweaked it any. I am always glad to see people putting their own spin on something. So that is it for this week. Next week, come back and I will show you how to make your own honey goat cheese mix with herbs using a food processor. Until then, live happy, eat well, and see you later.